I've heard so many stories of people who have met deaf people and then they found certain ways of communicating, such as through notes, or nowadays through like texting or whatever. There's some ways, or like I don't know, lip reading. There's so many stories of those, but I've never had that experience. I don't know why. I grew up in Hong Kong. I'd never, well, not that I know of, I've never met a deaf person in my life until I started learning sign language and I sought them out. And then I sort of, I had a habit of like finding them, like I could like that. I could see them go like from afar, like, oh, that person's probably signing. Now I have the ability, but I've heard so many people just have had some experience with deaf people. I'm like, why have I never had that? Why is that not a thing in my upbringing? Because if I had the experience, I would have had at least some any awareness of like deafness, right? That's so weird. I just didn't. I had never thought about them until I started learning the language, and it's so weird to me. Is that partly because our culture in Hong Kong is much less community based? We don't really build communities around people we see often. We just, like when we see our neighbors, we just ignore them. That's a stereotype, right? When you're in the lift and it's about to close and someone wants to come in, you just press the close button many times because you don't want to talk to anyone that you see all the time. And I did actually, yeah, I mean, everyone around me, we just never talk to neighbors or people of that sort. So maybe that's why, because you, I assume you grew up in Britain and then you were more open to interacting with strangers, such as the kid on the bus. Whereas I would be like, no, I can't see them. Nobody exists except people I already know. Maybe that's why. To be fair, I've only met 2 or 3 deaf people. That's 2 or 3 people more than me. I mean, I've met a lot of them now. I'd love to meet more. I met a few last night at the theatre, but yeah, I have a few deaf friends, and that's kind of it. So I'm still sort of building my community. As like I say in my last video, we find our own community. Even though I'm not an actual part of the deaf community, at least not quite yet. There was one line in the play last night that was really funny. That there were a few really good lines, but there was one line that went like, so the deaf person to the hearing person, oh, you're practically deaf except you can hear. That was so incredibly funny. So what they meant was, when the hearing person is like very deeply integrated into the deaf community, for example, especially if they have a deaf partner or child or maybe just friend potentially, when they like live in a very deaf culture influenced way, so they're like quote unquote deaf, and it's so funny. You're basically deaf except you can hear. That's like an oxymoron, but it's a very beautiful oxymoron.